Expressing thoughts, feelings, and emotions through the power of words can be a powerful sentiment which signals the beginning and the ongoing process of healing. This is certainly the case for Juliet Rose. She's an author who uses the power of her words to portray characters in all walks of life overcoming adversity, which she has experienced plenty during the course of her life. She lost her mother when she was 11 years old and her infant daughter at the age of 4. She joined me this week to tell me about the passion that she has for the art of writing and how she's used it to persevere through some of her darkest days to be a role model for others to follow. I'm Kevin McShann, and let's have this conversation. Take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn all about your passion for writing and a little bit about your personal life as well. Great to be with you this afternoon, and thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, and I know, Juliet, that you were introduced to writing at a young age, so I'm wondering if we could go back to your 10-year-old self where you first developed a passion for writing.
Sure. So yeah, I was one of those young kids that loved to tell stories. I would entertain neighborhood kids with my stories, and at 10, I decided that I wanted to become a writer. And I convinced my mother to get me a typewriter out of the newspaper classifieds.
Yeah, absolutely, and I know that you've written books about all different types of characters, so I'm curious to ask you about your style of writing as well.
Sure. Yeah. So I originally wrote a lot of nonfiction over, a few decades for magazines and articles. I wrote a lot of nonfiction, and then more recently decided to really delve into fiction using a lot of what I learned through nonfiction. So I call it truth in fiction. So my style of writing has a lot to do with me taking maybe social issues or things I see in the world and working them into fiction stories to reach a broader base.
And do you think when you write a book, I'm also curious to know the audience that you're hoping to reach and the conversations you're hoping to start as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to reach everybody, but outside of that, I really, I think that's kind of why I shifted was, I really am trying to reach people that love a good fiction story, but maybe are a little more open to perspectives that they hadn't had before. And so I want to have those conversations with my readers by bringing in, maybe some harder subjects. My stories deal a lot with subjects from anything from, police brutality to drug use to prison, sentences. And so what I'm trying to do is basically open the reader's mind, perspective, different way maybe than they had before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also know that cancer has played a big role and impact in your life, and I know it's helped to shape the way that you overcome obstacles to persevere. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about it.
Sure. So from a very early age, cancer was very pervasive in my life. My mother passed when I was 11 from leukemia. And that kind of shuttled my brother and I around to different family members and kind of on our own. And then later on, when I had children of my own, my second daughter also was diagnosed with cancer. She was diagnosed with a brain tumor and subsequently passed from that. So obviously, having those experiences in my life made me very, I guess, hyper aware and empathetic of other people's situations, and that life isn't always sunshine and roses. So it's definitely come into my writing and how I want to, I guess, present not only myself to the world, but what I do to the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Juliet, you're a New York native, but you're living in the mountains of Georgia. So tell me, how does that happen?
That was a kind of a long trail to get here. So yes, I'm a New York native and spent a lot of time in my childhood between New York and North Carolina. So I switched back and forth. My mother divorced and we moved to North Carolina, and we ended up moving back to New York. And then as an adult, I have lived actually all over the country. And, when it kind of came my time to decide where do I want to be, I had spent some time in the mountains of North Carolina and Georgia as a teen and really loved it and thought it was very beautiful. And so I just picked it and decided to move here.
Well, there's nothing like having a life with a little bit of adventure, huh?
Very much so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you're also passionate about rescuing animals, painting, and of course writing. And tell me that you have a dream to get an RV to explore hidden gems of the world. So tell me about your propensity to want to travel. And I also know you're into restaurants as well, huh?
For sure, yeah. So I actually, because I grew up, my mother, after her divorce, had actually gotten an RV and we traveled across country and into Mexico. And so it's just been one of those things as an adult I'd like to do myself. I really enjoyed that as a child and got to see a lot of different places and things I think a lot of people didn't get to. And so it gave me that bug that I still have. And as far as restaurants, yes, I love food. I love to just explore. When I go to a new area, I like to go to different restaurants and try things out. And I am vegan, so it's usually a little bit of a challenge to find those restaurants. But when you do, it's always really exciting.
Yeah, what's the most interesting thing you think you've eaten so far?
Oh, I think what I like is when people take variations of non-vegan foods and make them into a vegan meal. So I've had anything from like a tempeh Reuben. I had that in a little cafe in Montauk, New York. Just anything, honestly. I'm pretty open. I really like ethnic food, so I get really excited when I find something like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, I'm curious, Juliet, for you, what's the best part about living life?
Best part about living life, I think it's the connections we make. Honestly, I think that, when you find people out there that just get it, that just really enjoy what they do and, want to make the world a better place, that's really something special. And that's something that I really grasp onto.
Yeah, and tell me, finally, I'm curious to ask you about your own personal and professional legacy and how you want that to be defined.
Yeah, that's a big one for me. And it's something I think with losing my daughter after she died, I really thought a lot about like what our purpose is here, why we come here and what we should leave behind. And I did learn a lot, I think, through her. And she was young. She was only 4, but like she was a really loving and giving person and very forgiving. She went through a lot. But a story I like to share is that, she had a portacath, and that's like where you have like an access into your veins under your skin. And so a nurse would have to come once a week and change that out. And it was something she didn't like. It really was traumatizing to her. But, she'd go through that. The nurse would change out the needle and get it set. And then as soon as my daughter would climb in her lap and just wrap her arms around the nurse. And I think that's really what I learned about life and what I want to leave is like, we have this ability to look past the things that we feel like hurt us or create suffering and really reach out and be kind. And so in the end of my life, if somebody was to look back and talk about me, I'd hope they say that I was kind and that I reached out to other people and was forgiving and tried to make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, tell me if people want to get connected with you or learn more about the book that you write, what's the best way they can do that?
A great place to start is my website, which is authorjulietrose.com. I have all of my links on there. So for different social media, to purchase books, information about me, if they start there, they can usually find the trail to other things as well.
Well, fantastic. Well, I appreciate you carving out a couple of minutes in your weekend to share a little bit about your passions for life and your writings as well. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated. And I want to thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for taking time to let me have a moment of yours.